Introduction. Why most control is invisible. Most influence happens without force. No raised voices, no threats, no demands, just subtle shifts in tone, timing, and framing that guide you toward decisions you didn't consciously choose. Web. Someone asks you something in a certain way and you say yes, even though you wanted to say no. Someone goes quiet and you feel compelled to fill the silence with explanation. Someone frames a choice as reasonable, and you accept it without noticing the other options that were never mentioned. Web. This is not manipulation in the dramatic sense. It's influence, and it's everywhere on web. Most people don't recognize it. They think influence requires pressure, aggression, or overt control. But the most effective influence is silent. It works through implication, not instruction. Through emotional pull, not logical argument. Through what's unsaid as much as what's spoken. Web. 15. You comply without being commanded. You adjust without being told. You feel obligated without anyone explicitly asking. Web. 12. Web. 18. This happens because human beings are wired for social influence. We scan for approval. We fear rejection. We seek to belong. And those patterns, built over millennia of survival, make us responsive to subtle cues even when we don't realize it. Web. The problem is not that influence exists. The problem is that most people move through life unaware of it. They react automatically. They comply reflexively. They make decisions based on emotional pressure they don't even notice. Web. 15. This audiobook is not about becoming manipulative. It's about becoming aware. You will learn how silent influence works, psychologically, emotionally, socially. You'll see how choices are shaped before you make them, how guilt operates without accusation, how authority functions without force, how silence becomes pressure, how reasonable requests carry hidden expectations. Web. And you'll learn how to stay centered when these forces are at play, how to pause instead of react, how to notice pressure without internalizing it, how to choose consciously instead of complying automatically. This is not about winning conversations or controlling others. It's about reclaiming internal authority. It's about making decisions from clarity, not compliance. It's about psychological sovereignty, the ability to remain unmoved by forces designed to move you. Web. Most people will never develop this awareness. They'll spend their lives responding to invisible pulls, making choices they believe are theirs but are actually shaped by others. But you're here, which means you're ready to see what most people miss. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Silent Influence: How Pressure Works Without Words. 1. Micro-story. Alex sits across from his manager in a one-on-one meeting. The manager leans back, pauses, and says in a calm tone, "I need someone I can count on for this project." The words are neutral, but the implication is clear. If you say no, you're not reliable. Alex feels the pull. He's already overloaded. He knows taking this on will drain him. But the way the request was framed, not as a demand, but as a subtle test of loyalty, makes saying no feel like a failure. He hesitates. The manager stays silent. The silence stretches. It creates pressure without a single additional word. "Sure," Alex says. "I'll handle it." The manager smiles. "I knew I could count on you." Alex leaves the room feeling uneasy. He didn't want to say yes, but he also didn't feel like he had a choice. There was no threat, no ultimatum, just tone, timing, and implication. That evening, he replays the conversation. He realizes the control wasn't in what was said, it was in how it was said. The pause, the framing, the unspoken expectation, the silence that made him fill the gap with compliance. This is how silent influence works. No force, just pressure disguised as normalcy. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Silent influence operates beneath conscious awareness. It doesn't announce itself. It shapes your response before you realize you're being influenced. Web 15. Here's how it works. Tone as emotional framing. The same sentence can carry completely different weight depending on tone. I need your help, said warmly, feels like a request. Said with a slight edge, it feels like an obligation. Said with disappointment, it becomes guilt. Web. Most people respond to tone before they process content. Your nervous system picks up on vocal cues, pitch, pace, emphasis, and reacts emotionally. By the time you consciously register the words, your body has already decided how to feel. This is why tone is one of the most powerful tools of silent influence. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to emotion. Timing creates urgency. When someone asks for something matters as much as what they ask for. A request made at the end of a long day when you're tired and your defenses are low is more likely to get a yes. A question asked right before a deadline creates pressure to decide quickly, before you can fully consider. Web 15. Timing manipulates your decision-making environment. It forces choices when you're least equipped to evaluate them clearly. Implication. Overstatement. Skilled influencers rarely state their expectations directly. They imply, I thought you'd understand, suggests you've failed without saying it. I don't want to pressure you, but creates pressure while denying it. Most people would. Establishes a norm you're expected to follow. Web. Implication is powerful because it makes you fill in the gaps. You complete the sentence in your own mind. And once you've done that, it feels like your thought, not theirs. Web 15. Silence as leverage. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of influence. When someone asks you something and then goes quiet, the silence creates discomfort. You feel compelled to fill it, to explain, to justify, to comply. Web. Silence forces you to speak first, and whoever speaks first often concedes. The person who stays silent maintains control without saying a word. Framing choices. How options are presented determines which one you choose. If someone offers two options and frames one as reasonable and the other as extreme, you're likely to choose the reasonable one, even if neither serves your actual interests. Web. Framing doesn't force a decision. It shapes perception, and perception drives choice. Web 16. Unspoken expectations. Many people operate from internalized expectations they never consciously agreed to. Family helps family. Good employees go the extra mile. Real friends are always available. These unspoken rules create compliance without explicit demands. Web. You follow them because they feel like moral truths, but they're social constructs, and someone benefits when you follow them without question. Conformity pressure. Humans are wired to conform. If everyone around you is doing something, your brain interprets it as safe, correct, or necessary, even when it's not. Web. This is why everyone else agreed is such effective influence. It activates your fear of being the outlier. The pattern looks like this. Subtle cue, tone, timing, framing, emotional response, guilt, urgency, obligation, automatic compliance, no conscious choice made. Silent influence doesn't announce itself, it just moves you. And unless you learn to notice it, you'll keep moving without understanding why. Web 15. 3 real-life scenarios. Workplace request. Direct ask, can you stay late and finish this? Silent influence. I really need someone reliable on this. Implies, prove you're reliable by saying yes. Family obligation. Direct ask, Come to the family gathering. Silent influence. It would mean a lot to your mother. Implies, if you don't come, you're hurting her. Friendship pressure. Direct ask. Lend me money. Silent influence. I don't know what I'm going to do. Implies, you're my only option, and if you don't help, you're abandoning me. Relationship dynamics. Direct ask. I want more of your time. Silent influence. Goes quiet when you're busy. Withdraws emotionally. Implies your choices are hurting me and I'm silently punishing you. Sales tactic. Direct ask. Buy this now. Silent influence. Most people choose this option. Implies, if you don't, you're not like most people. You're an outlier. Negotiation. Direct ask. Accept this offer. Silent influence. This is a fair deal. Frames the offer as reasonable before you've evaluated whether it actually is. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. I notice pressure, not obligation. Silence is not an emergency. I'm allowed to pause before answering. I don't need to fill discomfort with compliance. Implication is not fact. I can feel the pull without following it. Tone influences, but it doesn't decide for me. I separate what's said from what I'm feeling. I choose when I'm ready, not when pressed. Clarity matters more than comfort. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise 1. Tone awareness practice. For 1 week, notice the tone in requests directed at you. Don't react, just observe. How does tone shift your emotional response? Awareness is the first step to immunity. Exercise 2. The 5-second pause. When someone asks you something, pause for 5 seconds before responding. This interrupts automatic compliance and creates space for conscious choice. Exercise 3. Silence tolerance training. Practice sitting in silence during conversations. Don't fill the gap. Let the other person speak first. Notice how uncomfortable it feels and how powerful it is. Exercise 4. Implication decoding. When someone implies something without stating it, mentally complete the sentence. What are they really asking? Bringing implication into awareness removes its power. Exercise 5. Framing recognition. When presented with options, ask, what options aren't being mentioned? This exposes framing and expands your perception of choice. Chapter 2. Obligation, Guilt, and the Fear of Disappointing. 1. Micro-story. Nina's phone rings. It's her mother. I haven't heard from you in a while, her mother says. The tone is neutral, but Nina hears the weight beneath it. I've been really busy with work, Nina explains. Of course, you're always busy. A pause. I just thought you'd have a few minutes for your mother. Nina feels her chest tighten. She wasn't ignoring her mother, she's just had a lot going on. But now she feels guilty, like she's done something wrong, like she's a bad daughter. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll call more often. Don't worry about it, I understand. But the tone says otherwise. Nina hangs up feeling drained. She didn't want to apologize. She didn't actually do anything wrong. But the guilt was activated so smoothly, so subtly that she complied before she even realized what happened. This is how obligation works. No one demanded anything. No one accused her directly, but the implication was clear. You're neglecting me. You should feel bad. You need to fix this. And she did. Not because she wanted to, but because the guilt was unbearable. Later that evening, Nina realizes her mother didn't ask her to call more. She just made Nina feel bad enough that Nina offered it herself. That's the mechanism: guilt without accusation, obligation without demand, and compliance that feels like your own choice, but isn't. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Obligation and guilt are two of the most effective tools of silent influence. They don't require force. They require only the activation of internalized responsibility and the fear of disappointing someone. Web. Pointed. Here's how they work. Guilt as social control. Guilt is an emotional signal that you've violated a social or moral standard. It evolved to keep groups cohesive. When you harm someone, guilt motivates you to repair the relationship. But guilt can be weaponized. When someone makes you feel guilty for something you didn't actually do wrong, they've hijacked your moral compass. The key to guilt-based influence is that it doesn't require an accusation, just implication. I thought you cared. I guess I'm not a priority. These statements don't directly blame you, but they make you feel blamed. And once you feel blamed, you're motivated to fix it. Obligation without agreement. Most obligations are never explicitly agreed to. They're inherited, assumed, or imposed. Family takes care of each other. Friends show up. Good people don't say no. These feel like universal truths, but they're social constructs. And when you internalize them, you comply automatically, without questioning whether you actually agreed to the rule. The most effective obligations are the ones you believe you chose. But if you examine them closely, you'll often find they were installed by others and reinforced through repetition and guilt. The fear of disappointing. Humans are social creatures. We need connection to survive, and deep in our wiring is a fear. If I disappoint them, they'll reject me. This fear is primal. It bypasses logic. It makes you prioritize others' comfort over your own clarity. People who understand this fear can activate it with subtle cues. A sigh, a disappointed tone, a statement like, I thought you were different. These signals tell your nervous system, you're at risk of rejection. Fix this now. And you do, often before you've consciously decided to. Implied expectation. Guilt-based influence rarely involves direct demands. Instead, expectations are implied. I'm sure you'll do the right thing. I don't want to ask, but you're the only one I can count on. These statements create obligation without stating it explicitly. You fill in the gaps, and once you've filled them, the obligation feels like yours. Conditional approval. Some people give approval conditionally. You're valued when you comply. You're punished through withdrawal, silence, or disappointment when you don't. Over time, you learn, to be loved, I must say yes. This conditioning is powerful because it links your sense of worth to your willingness to meet others' needs. And once that link is formed, guilt becomes automatic. Saying no feels like self-betrayal. The double bind. Guilt-based influence often creates a double bind. If you say no, you feel guilty. If you say yes, you betray yourself. Either way, you lose. The only way out is to recognize the bind and refuse to play. But that requires awareness most people don't have. Why it works so well. Guilt and obligation work because they feel internal. You're not being forced, you're choosing, except you're not. You're responding to emotional pressure that was carefully applied. The influence is invisible, so the compliance feels voluntary. And that makes it nearly impossible to resist unless you see it clearly. The pattern looks like this. Implied expectation, guilt or fear of disappointing, internal pressure to comply. Voluntary agreement, resentment later. Breaking free requires recognizing that guilt imposed by others is not the same as genuine moral responsibility. And that disappointing someone is not the same as doing something wrong. 3. Real-life scenarios. Family dynamics. Direct demand. You need to visit more. Guilt-based influence. I guess I'll just be alone this weekend. implies, if you don't visit, I'm suffering and it's your fault. Friendship pressure. Direct demand, cancel your plans and come with me. Guilt-based influence. I thought we were close, implies, if you don't cancel, you're proving we're not close. Workplace. Direct demand, work this weekend. Guilt-based influence. The team is really counting on you. Implies if you don't work, you're letting everyone down. Romantic relationship. Direct demand, spend more time with me. Guilt-based influence. I feel like I'm not important to you. Implies your choices are hurting me and if you cared, you'd change. Volunteering. Direct demand, help with this event. Guilt-based influence. We're really short on volunteers. I don't know what we'll do. Implies, if you don't help, the event fails, and it's on you. Parenting. Direct demand, do what I say. Guilt-based influence, after everything I've done for you. Implies, you owe me compliance as repayment for care. 4. Scripts, internal language, not manipulation. Guilt without wrongdoing is not mine to carry. I don't owe compliance to avoid disappointment. Feeling bad doesn't mean I did something wrong. I can care about someone and still say no. Obligation I didn't agree to is not real obligation. I'm allowed to disappoint people. Their disappointment is theirs to manage. I separate their feelings from my responsibility. I choose based on clarity, not guilt. I don't need to fix what I didn't break. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise 1. Guilt trigger awareness. For 1 week, notice when guilt arises, ask, did I actually do something wrong or is this guilt being imposed? Distinguish between genuine accountability and manipulation. Exercise 2. The disappointment tolerance practice. Say no to one small request this week without justifying. Let the person be disappointed. Sit with the discomfort. Notice that disappointment doesn't destroy the relationship. Exercise 3. Obligation audit. List 3 obligations you feel regularly. For each, ask, when did I agree to this? Do I still agree? Release obligations you never consciously chose. Exercise 4. Implied expectation decoding. When someone implies you should do something, mentally state it explicitly. They're expecting me to blank. Bringing it into the open removes its invisible power. Exercise 5. The not my responsibility. Reminder. When guilt pressure appears, repeat internally. Their feelings are not my responsibility to manage. This anchors you back to appropriate boundaries. Chapter 3. Framing. How choices are shaped before you decide. 1. Micro story. Jordan walks into a car dealership. He's done his research. He knows what he wants. He's prepared to negotiate. The salesperson greets him warmly. Great to meet you. Let me show you our premium models first. These are what most of our serious buyers go for. Jordan didn't ask to see premium models, but now he's following the salesperson to the high-end section. They stop at a car priced $15,000 above Jordan's budget. The salesperson highlights features, talks about quality, and mentions how this model holds its value better than the cheaper ones. Jordan feels the pull. He didn't come here for this car. But now the word cheaper is in his head. The car he originally wanted suddenly feels like a downgrade. The salesperson then shows him a mid-range option. This one is more accessible, still great quality, but not quite as premium. Jordan's budget was $25,000. This car is $30,000, but compared to the $40,000 model he just saw, it feels reasonable, like a compromise, like he's being smart. He buys it. Later, driving home, he realizes he spent $5,000 more than he planned, and he didn't even notice the decision happening. The salesperson never forced him, never pressured him. Just frame the choices in a specific order, and Jordan's perception shifted accordingly. This is framing, and it shapes decisions before you're aware you're deciding. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Framing is the psychological structure around a choice. It determines how you perceive your options, and perception drives decision. Here's how it works. Anchoring effect. The first piece of information you receive becomes the anchor. Everything else is judged relative to it. If you're shown an expensive option first, mid-priced options feel cheap by comparison. If you're told something will take 5 hours, 3 hours feels fast, even if 3 hours is still a long time. Web 16. Anchors set your baseline, and once set, they're hard to ignore. Your brain uses the anchor as a reference point even when it's arbitrary or irrelevant. Contrast and relativity. Humans don't evaluate things in absolute terms. We evaluate them relative to what we've just seen. A $50 meal feels expensive after seeing $20 options, but it feels cheap after seeing $100 options, even though the meal itself hasn't changed. Lust. Framing manipulates contrast. By controlling what you see first, influencers control how everything else looks. Gain versus loss. Framing. The same information framed differently produces different decisions. This treatment has a 90% success rate, feels positive. This treatment has a 10% failure rate, feels risky, even though both statements are identical. People are more motivated to avoid loss than to pursue gain. So framing something as a potential loss, if you don't act now, you'll miss out, is more persuasive than framing it as a potential gain. If you act now, you'll benefit. Default options. The option presented as default carries hidden power. People tend to stick with defaults because changing requires effort and feels like a decision. If yes is pre-selected, most people will leave it. If no is the default, most won't switch. Default framing exploits inertia. It makes one choice feel like the path of least resistance, and most people take it. Limited options. When you're given only 2 or 3 options, you assume those are the only possibilities. You choose from what's presented without realizing what's missing. Web 16. Effective framing limits your field of vision. It makes you focus on the choices offered while hiding the choices not mentioned. The illusion of choice. Framing often creates the illusion that you're making a free decision, when in reality the decision was guided from the start. You feel autonomous because you chose, but you chose from a curated set designed to lead you somewhere specific. True choice requires awareness of all options, not just the ones presented. And most people never ask, what am I not being shown? Social proof as frame. Most people choose this as a frame. It suggests that this option is correct, safe, or desirable because others have chosen it. Your brain interprets popularity as validity, even when it's not. This is conformity bias embedded in framing. It makes you feel like you're following wisdom when you're actually following the crowd. Authority framing. When an authority figure presents options, their position adds weight to their preferred choice. As your doctor, I recommend, in my professional experience. These phrases frame the decision as already decided by someone more knowledgeable. You're not really choosing, you're deferring. The pattern looks like this. Information presented in specific order, perception shaped, options narrowed, decision made within frame, belief that choice was yours. Framing doesn't force decisions, it shapes the space in which decisions happen. And unless you notice the frame, you'll believe you're choosing freely when you're not. Web 19. 3. Real-life scenarios. Pricing strategy. Unframed item costs $50, framed originally $100, now $50. Anchors at $150 feels like a deal even if the item was never worth $100. Medical decision. Unframed, this surgery has risks. Framed, 90% of patients recover fully. Gain framing makes it feel safer than saying 10% experience complications. Workplace negotiation. Unframed, discussing salary. Framed, most people in this role start at $60K. Anchors expectations low, asking for more now feels aggressive. Subscription service. Unframed, sign-up page with options. Framed, premium plan is pre-selected. Default bias means most people won't switch to basic. Political messaging. Unframed policy proposal. Framed, this policy protects families. Gain framing makes opposition feel like you're against families. Restaurant menu. Unframed, list of meals. Framed, one item labeled chef's special and priced highest. Anchor effect makes other items feel reasonably priced. 4. Scripts, internal language, not manipulation. I notice how this is being framed. What options aren't being mentioned? I separate the frame from the facts. Default doesn't mean correct. I check the anchor before I decide. I don't assume these are my only choices. Popularity doesn't equal validity. I make decisions outside the frame they set. I'm allowed to ask for what wasn't offered. Framing influences, but I choose consciously. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise. 1. Anchor awareness. This week, notice the first piece of information you receive in any decision context. Ask, is this anchoring my perception? Identify the anchor before you evaluate options. Exercise 2. Reframe practice. Take one decision you made recently. Reframe it differently. How would the choice look if presented in reverse order? This exposes how framing shaped your perception. Exercise 3. Option expansion. When given a choice, pause and ask, what's not on this list? Generate 1 or 2 additional options yourself. This breaks the frame and expands your field of view. Exercise 4. Default challenge. When something is pre-selected or presented as default, consciously evaluate all other options before accepting it. Resist inertia. Exercise 5. Loss versus gain translation. When you hear a message framed around loss, don't miss out. Translate it to gain framing. If I choose this, I'll gain blank. Notice how your emotional response changes. This reveals the manipulation in framing. Chapter 4. Emotional leverage and unspoken expectations. 1. Micro story. Liam is having coffee with an old friend. They haven't spoken in months. The conversation is light at first, catching up, laughing, reminiscing. Then the tone shifts. Things have been really hard lately, his friend says, staring into his cup. I don't know how I'm going to make rent this month. Liam feels his chest tighten. He didn't expect this. His friend continues. I hate asking for help. You know me. I've always figured things out on my own, but this time, I don't know. There's a pause. The friend looks up, not quite making eye contact. I just don't have anyone else I can talk to about this. Liam knows what's happening. He's being set up, not directly asked, but positioned. The emotional groundwork is being laid. The expectation is being built without words. And he feels it. The pull to offer. The guilt if he doesn't. The sense that if he stays silent, he's abandoning someone in need. How much do you need? Liam hears himself ask. His friend's face brightens. I hate to even say it, maybe 500. I'll pay you back, I promise. Liam agrees. They move on to lighter topics. But as Liam drives home, he feels uneasy. He didn't want to lend that money. He wasn't asked directly. But he also couldn't say no because the expectation had already been built. The emotional pressure had already been applied. This is emotional leverage, and it works because it doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like vulnerability. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Emotional leverage is the use of feelings, yours or theirs, to move you toward a specific action without explicitly requesting it. Web community. Here's how it works. Vulnerability as a tool. Vulnerability can be genuine, but it can also be strategic. When someone shares emotional distress in a way that positions you as the solution, they're using vulnerability to create obligation. They're not asking directly. They're making you feel responsible for fixing their situation. Web kunde. The key is the setup. Genuine vulnerability doesn't come with expectation. Strategic vulnerability does. It's designed to make you offer what they want without them having to ask. Unspoken expectations. Emotional leverage operates through expectations that are never stated but strongly felt. I'm struggling implies you should help. I'm disappointed implies you did something wrong. I thought you cared implies prove it by doing what I want. Web tycoon. These expectations feel like moral truths, but they're constructs, and when you internalize them you comply, not because you chose to, but because the emotional architecture made it feel inevitable. The sympathy-obligation link. Humans are wired for empathy. When someone is suffering, we feel compelled to help. This is pro-social and necessary, but it can be exploited. When someone presents their suffering in a way that makes you the designated rescuer, they've weaponized your empathy. The emotional response, sympathy, becomes linked to action, obligation. And once that link is activated, saying no feels cruel, even when it's not. Positioning you as the hero or the villain. Emotional leverage often creates a binary. Either you're the hero who helps or you're the villain who abandons. There's no middle ground presented. This is a false dichotomy, but in the moment it feels real. Web 7. And most people, when faced with that binary, will choose hero, even at their own expense. Withdrawal as punishment. Some people use emotional withdrawal as leverage. They don't argue, they don't demand, they just go cold, distant, silent, and you feel the void. You feel the loss of warmth, and you scramble to fix whatever you did wrong, even if you didn't do anything. Web Tortu. This works because humans fear abandonment. Withdrawal activates that fear, and once activated, you'll often comply just to restore connection. The "I don't want to burden you" frame. This phrase is emotional leverage disguised as consideration. I don't want to burden you, but is a setup. It makes you feel obligated to prove you're not burdened. It preemptively frames your potential no as rejection. Web. By saying they don't want to burden you, they've made any boundary you set feel like cruelty. Implied reciprocity. After everything I've done for you. This statement activates reciprocity, the social norm that when someone does something for you, you owe them in return. But often the help they gave was unsolicited, or it came with strings you didn't know about. Web 17. Web 20. Reciprocity is a powerful social force, but it can be manipulated, and when it is, you feel obligated to repay debts you never agreed to incur. Why it's hard to resist. Emotional leverage works because it doesn't feel like influence. It feels like empathy, care, and moral responsibility. You're not being manipulated, you're being a good person. Except you're not. You're being moved by someone who understands your emotional wiring and knows how to pull the levers. Web 20. The pattern looks like this. Emotional disclosure, unspoken expectation, sympathy activated, feeling of obligation, compliance without direct request. Recognizing emotional leverage doesn't mean becoming cold or unsympathetic. It means distinguishing between genuine need and strategic positioning, between helping because you choose to and helping because you were emotionally cornered. Web seker. 3 real-life scenarios. Friendship. Direct ask. Can you lend me money? Emotional leverage. Shares detailed financial distress. Mentions they have no one else. Waits for you to offer. Positions you as the only solution without asking directly. Family dynamics. Direct ask. Come to the event. Emotional leverage. It would break my heart if you weren't there. Implies, your absence causes emotional harm, making you responsible for their feelings. Romantic relationship. Direct ask. I want more of your time. Emotional leverage. I feel so alone when you're busy. Implies, your choices are causing their loneliness, making you responsible for fixing it. Workplace. Direct ask. Work this weekend. Emotional leverage. I'm really drowning here and I don't know what I'll do if I can't finish this. Positions you as the potential savior without directly asking. Parenting. Direct ask. Do what I tell you. Emotional leverage. I'm so disappointed in you. Uses disappointment to create guilt and compliance without stating the expectation clearly. Volunteer work. Direct ask. Help with this project. Emotional leverage. We're really struggling to keep this going. It means so much to the community. Makes you feel responsible for the outcome without a direct request. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. Sympathy doesn't equal obligation. I can care without rescuing. Their distress is not my responsibility to solve. I'm allowed to say no even when someone is struggling. I distinguish between genuine need and emotional setup. I don't owe repayment for help I didn't ask for. Withdrawal is their choice, not my emergency. I separate their feelings from my actions. I help when I choose to, not when I'm cornered. I'm not the villain for having boundaries. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise. 1. Leverage recognition. For 1 week, notice when someone shares emotional information that makes you feel responsible for solving their problem. Ask, are they asking or are they positioning? Exercise. 2. The pause before offering. When you feel the urge to offer help immediately, pause for 24 hours. Give yourself space to evaluate whether you're choosing freely or responding to emotional pressure. Exercise 3. Expectation clarification. When you sense an unspoken expectation, name it, internally or aloud. It sounds like you're hoping I'll blank. Bringing it into the open removes its hidden power. Exercise 4. Reciprocity audit. List instances where you feel you owe someone. For each, ask, did I agree to this exchange or was it imposed? Release debts you never consciously accepted. Exercise 5. Withdrawal tolerance practice. When someone withdraws emotionally to pressure you, resist the urge to fix it immediately. Sit with the discomfort. Let them manage their own feelings. Notice that the relationship survives or reveals itself as conditional. Chapter 5. Authority without power 1. Micro story. Sarah sits in a meeting. Her manager hasn't said much. He's sitting back, arms crossed, listening as the team discusses a project direction. Then he speaks, not loudly, not forcefully. Just a single sentence. I'm not sure that's the direction we want to take. The room goes quiet. No one argues. No one offers a counterpoint. The idea, seconds ago the frontrunner, is immediately abandoned. Sarah notices this. Her manager didn't explain why the direction was wrong. He didn't offer evidence. He didn't demand compliance. He just expressed doubt. And that was enough. Later, Sarah reflects on why. Her manager doesn't yell. He doesn't micromanage. He doesn't threaten. But when he speaks, people listen. When he hesitates, people adjust. When he shows the slightest disapproval, people scramble to course correct. He doesn't have power in the traditional sense. He has authority, and authority doesn't need force. It just needs presence. Sarah realizes this is how some people influence entire rooms without raising their voice. They've cultivated a presence that makes their opinions feel like fact. Their silence feels like judgment. Their approval feels like validation. And people move around them, not because they're forced to, but because the authority is internalized. It's in the air. It's assumed. This is authority without power, and it's one of the most effective forms of influence. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Authority is not the same as power. Power is the ability to force compliance. Authority is the ability to command it without force. Webb. Here's how it works. Perceived expertise. When someone is perceived as an expert, their opinions carry more weight, even in areas outside their expertise. A doctor's opinion on medicine feels authoritative, but people also defer to that doctor's opinion on unrelated topics, simply because the halo of authority extends beyond its original domain. Webb. This is the authority halo effect. Once someone is granted authority in one area, that authority bleeds into others, and people stop questioning them as much. Positional authority. Titles, roles, and positions confer authority automatically. A manager, a professor, a senior colleague, these roles come with built-in deference. People assume that someone in that position knows more, deserves respect, or has earned the right to guide decisions. Webb. Even when positional authority is undeserved, it still works, because people don't evaluate the person, they respond to the role. Calm certainty. Authority is often communicated through tone and demeanor. Someone who speaks with calm certainty, no hesitation, no doubt, creates the impression that they know something you don't. You assume their confidence is based on knowledge. Often it's not. But the delivery makes you believe it is. Webb. Certainty is persuasive. Doubt invites questioning. So people who want to be authoritative eliminate visible doubt, even when internal doubt exists. Subtle disapproval. Authority figures don't need to criticize openly. A raised eyebrow, a pause, a slight tone shift. These micro-signals communicate disapproval without words, and people attuned to authority's judgment adjust immediately. Webb. This works because humans are wired to seek approval from those they perceive as higher status. Disapproval from an authority figure activates social anxiety, and to relieve that anxiety, people comply. Scarcity of speech. People who speak less are often perceived as more authoritative. When someone talks constantly, their words lose weight. When someone speaks rarely, each word carries significance. Silence creates gravitas. And when that person finally speaks, everyone listens. Webb. This is strategic silence. It makes every utterance feel important, and it trains others to wait for permission, approval, or direction. Nonverbal dominance. Authority is often established nonverbally. Posture, eye contact, stillness. People who take up space maintain steady eye contact and move with deliberate, calm project authority, even if they hold no formal power. Webb. Others unconsciously defer to these signals because our brains are wired to recognize dominance cues from evolutionary history. And those cues still work today. The power of framing. Others' ideas. Authoritative people often don't generate ideas. They frame them. Someone else proposes. The authority figure responds with, "That's interesting. What if we approached it this way instead?" They've redirected without rejecting, and the room follows their direction, not the original idea. Webb. This is soft authority. It doesn't dominate overtly. It guides subtly, and it's far more effective than force. Why people defer. People defer to authority because it's easier than thinking independently. Authority offers certainty and uncertainty. It removes the burden of decision-making, and it provides social safety. If the authority figure is wrong, you're not individually blamed. Web. Authority is a shortcut, and most people take shortcuts. The pattern looks like this. Authority established, expertise, role, demeanor. Deference assumed, opinions treated as fact. Compliance without question, authority reinforced. Authority without power is influence in its purest form. It doesn't need threats, it doesn't need force, it just needs others to believe it's deserved. And they do. Web. 3 real-life scenarios. Workplace meeting. No authority. I think we should try this approach. Treated as one opinion among many. Authority present. I think we should try this approach. Treated as the direction. Others align immediately. Medical context. No authority. Friend suggests a health remedy. You research it before considering. Authority present. Doctor suggests a remedy. You follow it without much question. Even if evidence is equal, authority shifts your response. Social setting. No authority. Someone makes a joke that doesn't land. People stay quiet or move on. Authority present. Someone with social authority makes the same joke. People laugh. Authority makes content feel more valuable. Parenting. No authority. Parent yells constantly. Child stops responding. Authority eroded by overuse of force. Authority present. Parent speaks calmly but firmly. Child complies. Authority maintained through consistency and calm. Negotiation. No authority. You propose a number. It's questioned, challenged, negotiated heavily. Authority present. You propose a number with calm certainty. It's accepted more readily. Authority reduces pushback. Group decision. No authority. Everyone debates equally. Decision takes time. Consensus is difficult. Authority present. Authority figure offers perspective. Debate ends quickly. Decision follows their lead. Authority accelerates alignment. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. Authority doesn't equal correctness. I evaluate the idea, not the person. I'm allowed to question authority. Confidence doesn't mean knowledge. I don't defer automatically. I check. Is this person actually right or just authoritative? I separate role from wisdom. I make my own decisions even when authority speaks. Authority influences, but I choose. I don't need approval from authority to trust myself. 5 practical psychological exercises. Exercise 1. Authority awareness. For 1 week, notice when you defer to someone's opinion simply because of their position, title, or demeanor. Ask, would I agree if this came from someone else? Exercise 2. Questioning practice. When an authority figure makes a claim, pause and internally ask, what's the evidence? Don't accept certainty as proof. Evaluate content independently. Exercise 3. Confidence versus knowledge. Separation. Identify one confident person in your life. Reflect, how often are they actually right versus simply certain? This reveals the gap between confidence and competence. Exercise 4. Independent decision check. Before aligning with an authority figure's direction, ask yourself, what would I choose if they hadn't spoken? Compare. Decide consciously. Exercise 5. Authority resistance practice. Choose one low-stakes situation where you'd normally defer to authority. Make your own choice instead. Notice how uncomfortable it feels and how empowering it is once done. Chapter 6. Silence, Withdrawal, and passive control. 1. Micro story. Ethan sends a text to his partner. It's about plans for the weekend. Simple, straightforward. Hours pass, no response. At first, he doesn't think much of it. She's probably busy. But as the day continues and the silence stretches, he starts to feel uneasy. He texts again. Hey, just checking in. Still nothing. Now he's replaying their last conversation. Did he say something wrong? Is she upset? He didn't think so. But the silence makes him question everything. By evening, he's anxious. He calls. It goes to voicemail. Finally, late that night, she responds. I'm fine, just needed space. No explanation, no context, just those words. Ethan feels relief and frustration. He wasn't asking for much, but her silence turned a simple question into a day of anxiety. And now he's hesitant to bring anything up again, because he doesn't want to trigger another withdrawal. Over time, he notices a pattern. Whenever there's tension or disagreement, she doesn't argue. She just goes quiet, distant, unavailable. And that silence, more than any argument, controls his behavior. He adjusts. He softens. He avoids certain topics, all to prevent the void. This is passive control, and it's more effective than direct conflict because there's nothing to confront. Just absence, just silence, just the discomfort of disconnection. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Silence and withdrawal are powerful tools of influence. They don't require words. They don't require confrontation. They work by creating emotional discomfort that the other person feels compelled to resolve. Webb. Here's how it works. Silence as punishment. When someone goes silent after conflict or disagreement, the silence functions as punishment. It communicates, you did something wrong and I'm withdrawing connection as a consequence. This activates fear of abandonment, and to relieve that fear, people often comply, apologize, or adjust, even when they didn't actually do anything wrong. Web, phone. Silence is effective because it's ambiguous. You don't know if it's intentional or not. You don't know how long it will last. And that uncertainty creates anxiety. Withdrawal as leverage. Emotional withdrawal, pulling back warmth, affection, attention, creates a void. Humans are wired for connection. When connection is removed, we feel it deeply, and we'll often do whatever it takes to restore it. People who use withdrawal strategically know this. They don't need to state what they want. They just remove connection, and you scramble to figure out what will bring it back. The burden of initiating. When someone withdraws, the responsibility to re-engage falls on you. You're the one who has to reach out, apologize, explain, fix. This shifts power. The person who withdraws controls the dynamic without doing anything. Web. And often in your effort to reconnect, you'll concede things you shouldn't. You'll compromise your boundaries. You'll take responsibility for problems that aren't yours. Just to end the silence. Ambiguity as control. Passive control thrives on ambiguity. I'm fine. I just need space. It's nothing. These statements don't clarify, they obscure. You're left guessing, and in that guessing you adjust your behavior to avoid making things worse. Ambiguity keeps you off balance. You never know where you stand, and that instability makes you more compliant. Stonewalling. Stonewalling is the refusal to engage, emotionally or conversationally. Someone shuts down, stops responding, becomes a wall. This forces the other person to either give up or escalate. Either way, the person stonewalling controls the interaction by refusing to participate. Stonewalling is passive resistance, and it's often more frustrating than active conflict because there's nothing to engage with. Guilt through absence. When someone withdraws, you often feel guilty, even if you didn't do anything wrong. The absence implies you caused it. And because humans are wired to seek harmony, you internalize blame. You apologize. You fix. Even when there's nothing to fix, Web 17. This is projected guilt. The silent person doesn't have to accuse you. Their absence does it for them. The cycle of compliance. Over time, if withdrawal is used repeatedly, you learn to anticipate it. You start adjusting your behavior in advance to avoid triggering it. You become hyper-aware of the other person's emotional state. You suppress your needs. You avoid conflict, all to prevent the silence. Web. Frieden. This is conditioning, and it's incredibly effective. Because you're controlling yourself, they don't even have to ask. Why it's hard to confront. You can't confront silence. There's nothing tangible to address. If you bring it up, you're told you're overreacting. I just needed space. I wasn't ignoring you. The behavior is denied or minimized, and you're left questioning your own perception. Web. Feigning. This makes passive control nearly invisible. And that's why it works so well. The pattern looks like this. Conflict or disagreement, withdrawal, silence, anxiety and guilt, pursuit and compliance, behavior adjusted to avoid future withdrawal. Breaking free requires recognizing silence and withdrawal as influence tactics, not as neutral responses, and refusing to chase, explain, or fix when they occur. Web 14. 3 real-life scenarios. Romantic relationship. Direct conflict. I'm upset about this, let's talk. Passive control. Goes silent for days, no explanation. Forces you to initiate, apologize, and guess what's wrong. Friendship. Direct conflict. I felt hurt by what you said. Passive control. Stops responding to texts, becomes distant, makes you feel the loss without naming the issue. Workplace. Direct conflict. I disagree with this approach. Passive control. Stops contributing in meetings, withholds collaboration, creates tension through absence. Family dynamics. Direct conflict. I don't like how you're handling this. Passive control. Stops calling, becomes unavailable, uses distance to communicate disapproval without words. Parenting. Direct conflict. I need you to follow this rule. Passive control. Withdraws affection when child doesn't comply. Becomes cold. Child adjusts behavior to regain warmth. Negotiation. Direct conflict. That offer doesn't work for me. Passive control. Stops responding. Lets silence create pressure. Forces the other person to make concessions just to re-engage. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. Silence is not an emergency. I don't chase withdrawal. Their silence is their choice, not my responsibility. I'm allowed to wait for them to re-engage. Ambiguity is not my fault. I don't apologize for things I didn't do. Withdrawal is a tactic, not a feeling. I stay grounded even when they pull away. I don't adjust my behavior to prevent their silence. I wait for clarity, not chase confusion. 5 practical psychological exercises. Exercise 1. Silence tolerance practice. When someone goes silent, resist the urge to pursue immediately. Wait 24-48 hours. Let them re-engage. Notice that most silence resolves itself when you don't chase it. Exercise 2. Withdrawal recognition. For 1 week, notice when someone withdraws emotionally. Ask, is this a genuine need for space or is this a control tactic? Distinguish between the two. Exercise 3. The non-pursuit experiment. Next time someone uses silence as leverage, don't initiate, don't apologize, don't explain. Stay calm and available, but let them come to you. Observe the shift in dynamic. Exercise 4. Ambiguity clarification. When someone gives an ambiguous response, I'm fine, it's nothing. Ask once for clarity. If something's wrong, I'm here to talk. If they remain vague, accept it and move on. Don't chase clarity they won't provide. Exercise 5. Guilt reality check. When you feel guilty during someone's withdrawal, ask, did I actually do something wrong, or am I feeling guilty because they're absent? Separate real accountability from projected blame. Chapter 7. Social conditioning and automatic compliance. 1. Micro-story. Mara is at a family dinner. The meal is over. Everyone is sitting around the table talking. Her aunt stands up and starts clearing plates. Without thinking, Mara stands too. She begins gathering cups, carrying them to the kitchen. Her cousin sitting next to her stays seated, scrolling on his phone, not moving. Mara feels a flash of irritation. Why am I the one cleaning up? But she doesn't stop. She keeps moving, because stopping would feel wrong, like she's being rude, like she's violating some unspoken rule she can't quite name. Later, driving home, she reflects on this. No one asked her to help. No one expected it explicitly, but she felt the pull, the automatic compliance, the internalized belief that this is what you do. She realizes she's been following invisible rules her entire life, rules about politeness, about being helpful, about not making waves. Rules she never agreed to but absorbed through repetition, observation, and social reinforcement. And those rules control her behavior more than any direct request ever could. This is social conditioning, and most people follow it without ever questioning whether they actually agree with it. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Social conditioning is the process by which behaviors, beliefs, and norms are internalized through repeated exposure and reinforcement. Once internalized, they operate automatically, no force required. Web. Here's how it works. Norms as invisible rules. Every culture, family, and social group has norms, unwritten rules about how to behave. Be polite, don't interrupt, help when asked, respect your elders. These norms aren't laws, but they're enforced through social approval and disapproval. Web. And when you follow the norm, you're rewarded with acceptance. When you violate it, you face judgment, exclusion, or guilt. Over time, you internalize the norm. And once internalized, you follow it automatically, without anyone needing to tell you. Compliance is habit. Most compliance isn't conscious, it's habitual. You say yes because you've always said yes. You apologize because that's what you've been taught to do. You adjust because adjustment has been reinforced as the right behavior. These habits are formed through repetition, and once formed, they're difficult to break because they operate below conscious awareness. The role of early conditioning. Much of your social conditioning happened in childhood. You learned how to behave by watching adults, by receiving praise or punishment, by absorbing what was valued and what was criticized. These early lessons became templates, and decades later you're still operating from them, even when they no longer serve you. Fear of social rejection. Humans are deeply social. Rejection from the group once meant death. That fear is still wired into your nervous system, so when you sense that a behavior might lead to disapproval or exclusion, you adjust, often unconsciously. 15. Social conditioning exploits this fear. It makes certain behaviors feel dangerous, even when they're not, and other behaviors feel safe, even when they're self-sacrificial. Conformity pressure. You're more likely to comply with a norm when you see others doing it. If everyone stands when the national anthem plays, you stand too, even if you don't personally feel compelled to. This is conformity, aligning your behavior with the group to avoid standing out. Conformity is automatic. Your brain interprets group behavior as a signal of correctness, and you follow, often without conscious thought. Guilt as enforcement. When you violate a social norm, guilt often follows even when no one explicitly criticized you. This is internalized enforcement. You've absorbed the rule so deeply that you punish yourself when you break it. This makes social conditioning incredibly powerful. You don't need external control. You control yourself. The illusion of choice. Most people believe they're making free choices, but many of those choices are predetermined by social conditioning. You choose to be polite, to help, to comply, but that choice is shaped by years of reinforcement. It's not truly free. It's conditioned. Web. Real choice requires awareness of the conditioning, and most people never develop that awareness. Why it's hard to break. Breaking social conditioning feels like breaking yourself, because the conditioning is part of your identity. I'm a helpful person. I'm polite. I'm easygoing. These aren't just behaviors, they're how you see yourself. Changing them means changing your self-concept, and that's uncomfortable. The pattern looks like this. Early exposure to norms, reinforcement through approval, disapproval, internalization, automatic compliance, belief that compliance is freely chosen. Breaking free requires recognizing which rules you've internalized and asking whether you actually agree with them, or whether you're just following them because you always have. 3. Real-life scenarios. Politeness conditioning. Automatic compliance. Someone asks a personal question. You answer even though you're uncomfortable. Conditioned to be polite. Conscious choice. I'd rather not discuss that. Breaking the politeness norm intentionally. Helping behavior. Automatic compliance. Someone asks for help. You say yes even though you're overloaded. Conditioned to be helpful. Conscious choice. I can't right now. Breaking the helping norm without guilt. Authority deference. Automatic compliance. Boss makes a suggestion. You follow it without question. Conditioned to defer to authority. Conscious choice. I see it differently. Can we discuss? Questioning authority consciously. Gender norms. Automatic compliance. Woman does emotional labor in a relationship because that's what women do. Conditioned by gender norms. Conscious choice. I need you to share this responsibility. Breaking gendered expectations. Family roles. Automatic compliance. Always the peacemaker. Always mediating conflict. Conditioned family role. Conscious choice. I'm not mediating this time. Stepping out of the conditioned role. Social niceties. Automatic compliance. Asked, how are you? You say good, even when you're not. Conditioned to give expected answer. Conscious choice. I'm actually struggling. Breaking the social script. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. I notice the rule. I don't have to follow it. Conditioning is not choice. I'm allowed to break norms that don't serve me. Guilt from violating a norm doesn't mean I did something wrong. I evaluate, do I agree with this rule or am I just following it automatically? I'm not obligated to be what I was conditioned to be. I choose consciously, not habitually. Social disapproval is not danger. I can reject norms and still be a good person. I reclaim my behavior from conditioning. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise. 1. Norm awareness inventory. List 5 social norms you follow automatically. For each ask, do I actually agree with this or am I just conditioned to follow it? Keep the ones that align with your values. Question the rest. Exercise. 2. Micro-rebellion practice. Choose one small social norm to break this week. Example, don't apologize when you haven't done anything wrong. Notice the discomfort and the freedom. Exercise. 3. Compliance pattern tracking. For 1 week, notice every time you say yes automatically. Before answering, pause and ask, is this what I want or is this conditioning? Then choose consciously. Exercise. 4. Identity versus conditioning. Write down 3 traits you believe define you. For each, ask, is this who I am or is this who I was conditioned to be? Separate authentic identity from conditioned behavior. Exercise. 5. Social disapproval exposure. Do something that mildly violates a social norm, like not responding to small talk the expected way. Sit with the discomfort of disapproval. Notice that it doesn't destroy you. This builds tolerance for breaking conditioning. Chapter 8. Staying centered under subtle pressure. 1. Micro story. Tara is in a meeting. A colleague is pushing for a decision, not aggressively, just persistently. We really need to finalize this today, the colleague says. Everyone else has already agreed, we're just waiting on you. Tara feels the pressure. The implication is clear, she's the holdout. She's the reason things aren't moving forward. If she doesn't agree, she's the problem. But something feels off. She hasn't had enough time to review the proposal, she has questions. And agreeing just to relieve the pressure would be a mistake. She takes a breath. She doesn't rush. She doesn't explain. She just says calmly, I need another day to review this. The colleague hesitates. I really think we should move forward now. Tara holds steady. I'll have an answer tomorrow. The meeting ends. The pressure was real. But Tara didn't absorb it. She didn't let urgency override her clarity. She stayed centered. Later, she reflects on how easy it would have been to just say yes, to avoid the discomfort of holding her ground, to comply because everyone else had. But she didn't, because she's learned something. Pressure is only effective when you internalize it, and she didn't. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Staying centered under subtle pressure is a skill. It requires recognizing pressure without absorbing it, feeling the pull without following it. Remaining internally stable when external forces are trying to move you. Web finite. Here's how to develop it. Recognizing pressure without reacting. Most people react to pressure automatically. They feel urgency, so they act urgently. They feel guilt, so they comply. They feel social discomfort, so they adjust. The reaction is immediate and often unconscious. Web 13. Staying centered requires a pause between feeling and action. You notice the pressure, you name it internally, but you don't move, not yet. You give yourself time to evaluate whether the pressure is valid or just influence. Separating feeling from obligation. Pressure creates feelings, urgency, guilt, anxiety, discomfort. But feelings are not instructions. You can feel uncomfortable without needing to eliminate the discomfort immediately. You can feel guilty without needing to fix it. You can feel rushed without needing to rush. Web. Centered people understand this. They feel the feeling. They acknowledge it. But they don't let it dictate action. Feelings are information, not commands. The power of delay. One of the most effective ways to resist subtle pressure is delay. I'll get back to you. Let me think about it. I need more time. These statements create space between the request and your response. Delay neutralizes urgency. It gives you time to evaluate. And often when you delay, you realize the pressure wasn't as necessary as it seemed. The urgency was manufactured. Anchoring in your own clarity. Pressure works by making you doubt yourself. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being difficult. Maybe I should just go along. Staying centered requires anchoring in your own assessment. You know what you need. You know what feels right. And you trust that even when others are pushing differently. This doesn't mean being rigid. It means not abandoning your judgment just because someone else is insistent. Non-reactive language. Centered people use calm, non-reactive language. They don't over-explain. They don't justify excessively. They state their position simply and clearly, then stop talking. Web, Silam, I'm not ready to decide. I need more information. That doesn't work for me. These statements are complete. They don't invite negotiation, they don't apologize, they just are. Tolerating discomfort. Staying centered often means sitting in discomfort. The other person might be frustrated. The silence might be awkward. The pressure might intensify. But you stay. You don't rush to resolve their discomfort. You let it exist. Web 15. This is emotional endurance, and it's one of the most powerful forms of resistance, because most people can't tolerate discomfort, so they comply to end it. But centered people can, and that makes them nearly impossible to pressure. Grounding in the present. Pressure often works by pulling you into hypothetical futures. What if this goes wrong? What if they're upset? What if I regret this? These projections create anxiety, and anxiety drives compliance. Web 15. Staying centered requires returning to the present. Right now, I don't have enough information. Right now, this doesn't feel right. Right now, I'm choosing to wait. The present is solid. The future is speculation. Recognizing manufactured urgency. Much of the pressure you feel is manufactured. We need to decide now. Everyone else has already agreed. If we don't act fast, we'll miss the opportunity. These statements create urgency where none may actually exist. Web Thumb. Centered people question urgency. Why now? What happens if we wait? Is this deadline real, or is it imposed? Often the urgency dissolves under scrutiny. The pattern looks like this. Pressure applied. Pause instead of react. Evaluate validity. Respond from clarity, or choose not to respond. Internal stability maintained. Staying centered doesn't mean never complying. It means complying when you choose to, not when you're pressured to. Web 17. 3 real-life scenarios. Workplace decision. Pressured response agrees immediately to avoid conflict or seem difficult. Centered response, I need time to review this, I'll let you know tomorrow. Holds ground calmly. Social invitation. Pressured response says yes even though they don't want to go. Feels obligated. Centered response, I appreciate the invite, but I'm not available. No explanation needed. Financial ask. Pressured response. Lends money out of guilt or fear of disappointing someone. Centered response. I'm not in a position to lend money right now. States boundary calmly. Relationship conflict. Pressured response. Apologizes immediately to end tension even when not at fault. Centered response. I need time to think about this. Doesn't rush to resolution. Negotiation. Pressured response. Accepts the first offer because the silence feels uncomfortable. Centered response. Stays silent. Lets the other person speak first. Doesn't fill the gap with compliance. Group decision. Pressured response. Goes along with the majority to avoid being the outlier. Centered response. I see it differently. I'm not ready to agree yet. Holds individual perspective. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. I notice pressure. I don't internalize it. I'm allowed to take my time. Urgency is often manufactured. Discomfort is not an emergency. I respond when I'm ready, not when pushed. I don't need to explain my pause. I trust my own clarity. I stay grounded in the present. I separate their urgency from my decision. I can tolerate their discomfort without fixing it. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise 1. The 24-hour rule. When pressured to decide, implement a 24-hour rule. No decision for 24 hours regardless of urgency claims. This creates automatic space and breaks reactive compliance. Exercise 2. Pressure recognition practice. For 1 week, notice every time you feel pressure to act quickly. Pause. Name the pressure internally. Then decide consciously whether to act or wait. Exercise 3. Silence endurance training. In conversations where you feel pressured, practice staying silent instead of filling the gap. Let the other person speak first. Build tolerance for uncomfortable silence. Exercise 4. Non-reactive language rehearsal. Write 3 short, calm responses to common pressure situations. I need more time. That doesn't work for me. I'll think about it. Practice saying them until they feel natural. Exercise 5. Grounding breath practice. When pressure arises, take 3 slow breaths before responding. This interrupts the automatic reaction and brings you back to center. Simple but powerfully effective. Chapter 9. Calm resistance without conflict. 1. Microstory. Daniel's manager asks him to take on another project. It's the 3rd request this week. He's already overloaded. A few months ago, Daniel would have said yes immediately, then resented it, or he would have said no defensively, creating tension. But now, he does neither. He looks up calmly. I'm at capacity. I can take this on if we deprioritize something else. Which project should I pause? His manager hesitates. Well, they're all important. Daniel stays quiet, doesn't argue, doesn't justify, just waits. His manager shifts. Okay, let me reassign this to someone else. Daniel nods. Sounds good. The conversation ends. No conflict, no defensiveness, no explanation, just a clear boundary stated calmly and held. Later, a colleague asks him, "How do you say no without making people upset?" Daniel thinks for a moment. I don't try to make them not upset, I just stay calm. I don't apologize for having limits. And I don't engage in debates, I state what's true and I let them handle their reaction. This is calm resistance. It's not aggressive. It's not passive. It's grounded refusal. And it's one of the most effective forms of influence immunity. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Calm resistance is the ability to refuse influence without creating conflict. It's neither compliance nor confrontation. It's simply holding your ground, quietly, clearly, and without emotional charge. Web, Ferin. Here's how it works. Refusal without justification. Most people over-explain when they say no. They list reasons, justify their boundaries, and try to convince the other person that their no is reasonable. But justification invites negotiation. The more you explain, the more openings you create for pushback. Web binom fun. Calm resistance eliminates justification. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I'm choosing not to. These statements are complete. They don't require defense. They simply are. Neutrality of tone. Calm resistance is delivered without emotional charge, not angry, not apologetic, not defensive, just neutral. This neutrality removes the emotional hook that others might use to escalate or guilt you. When you're calm, there's nothing to argue against. Aggression invites aggression, defensiveness invites attack. But neutrality offers no entry point. It's a closed door, but not a slammed one. Allowing others' reactions. People will react to your no. They might be disappointed, frustrated, or confused. Calm resistance means allowing those reactions without managing them. You don't soothe. You don't apologize. You don't adjust your boundary to make them feel better. Web 15. Their reaction is theirs to handle. Your role is to hold your boundary, not to regulate their emotions. Non-reactive repetition. Sometimes people will push. They'll ask again, reframe the request, or apply more pressure. Calm resistance responds with non-reactive repetition. You restate your boundary, same words, same calm tone, without escalation. I understand, but my answer is still no. Repetition without variation signals that the boundary is firm, and most people, when they realize the boundary won't move, will stop pushing. Disengagement. Without drama. If pressure continues despite your boundary, calm resistance includes disengagement. You don't argue. You don't defend. You simply stop participating in the conversation. I've said what I needed to say. Then silence. Or you leave the room. Or you end the call. Not in anger, just in clarity. The conversation is over because you've decided it's over. Confidence without arrogance. Calm resistance is rooted in quiet confidence. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not asserting dominance. You're simply clear about your limits, and you trust that clarity is enough. This confidence is not loud. It's steady, and steadiness is far more powerful than force, resisting the urge to convince. Many people, when they set a boundary, feel the need to make the other person understand or agree. But calm resistance releases that need. You're not seeking approval. You're stating a fact. Whether they agree is irrelevant. This shift from seeking agreement to simply stating truth is what makes resistance calm. You're not at war. You're just unmoved. Why it works. Calm resistance works because it offers nothing to push against. There's no anger to counter. No guilt to exploit, no justification to dismantle, just a clear, calm boundary. And when there's nothing to engage with, most influence attempts dissolve. The pattern looks like this. Request or pressure, calm refusal, no justification, non-reactive repetition if needed, disengagement if persistence continues. Boundary maintained without conflict. Calm resistance is not about winning. It's about not losing yourself. It's about maintaining internal authority without needing external validation. 3 real-life scenarios. Work request. Reactive response. I guess I can try to fit it in. Resentful compliance. Aggressive response. I'm already doing too much. Creates conflict. Calm resistance. I'm at capacity. I can't take this on right now. Clear, calm, done. Social pressure. Reactive response makes an excuse. I wish I could, but I have this thing. Invites negotiation. Aggressive response. Why do you always ask me? Escalates. Calm resistance. I'm not available. No explanation, no apology. Family obligation. Reactive response goes along to avoid guilt. Self-betrayal. Aggressive response. I'm tired of being the only one who helps. Conflict. Calm resistance. I'm not able to help this time. Stated once. Held calmly. Relationship pressure. Reactive response. Defends, explains, tries to make partner understand. Exhausting. Aggressive response. You're being unreasonable. This creates fight. Calm resistance. I hear you, but my answer is the same. Non-reactive repetition. Sales tactic. Reactive response. Feels pressured, buys to end discomfort. Aggressive response. Stop pushing me. Defensive. Calm resistance. I'm not interested. Repeats if needed. Walks away if pressure continues. Calm. Final. Negotiation. Reactive response. Accepts unfavorable terms to avoid conflict. Aggressive response demands more. Creates tension. Calm resistance. That doesn't work for me. Stays silent. Lets them adjust or walk away. Neutral power. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. I don't need to explain my no. My boundary is not up for debate. I stay calm even when they push. Their reaction is not my responsibility. I don't need their approval to refuse. I state my truth once. That's enough. I allow their discomfort without fixing it. Calm is my power. I disengage when boundaries aren't respected. I don't argue. I just hold my ground. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise. 1. The one-sentence boundary. Practice refusing in one sentence. No explanation, no justification. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. Say it out loud until it feels natural. Exercise 2. Non-reactive repetition practice. Role play or visualize someone pushing after your no. Practice repeating the same boundary calmly. My answer is still no. Do this until it feels easy. Exercise 3. Reaction tolerance. Set one boundary this week. Notice the other person's reaction. Don't soothe it. Don't adjust. Just observe. Build tolerance for their discomfort. Exercise 4. Justification, elimination. For 1 week, refuse one thing daily without explaining why. I'm choosing not to is enough. Notice how uncomfortable it feels and how effective it is. Exercise 5. Disengagement drill. When someone continues pressuring after you've stated your boundary, practice disengagement. I've said what I needed to. Then go quiet or leave, not in anger, just in clarity. This teaches others your boundaries are real. Chapter 10. Making decisions from clarity, not pull. 1. Micro-story. Olivia is considering a job offer. On paper, it looks good. Better title, more money. Her friends are excited for her. But something feels off. She can't name it yet, but it's there. Her mentor asks, "Are you going to take it?" Olivia hesitates. "I think so. I mean, it's a great opportunity. Everyone says I'd be crazy not to." Her mentor pauses. "What do you think?" The question lands differently. Olivia realizes she hasn't actually asked herself that. She's been responding to external pull, the prestige, the expectations, the momentum. But she hasn't checked in with her own clarity. She sits with it. She removes the external voices, the shoulds, the comparisons, the pressure to decide quickly. And when she does, the answer becomes clear. She doesn't want the job. It's not aligned with where she actually wants to go. It's a step up in someone else's path, not hers. She declines the offer. People are surprised. But it's such a good opportunity. Olivia stays calm. It's a good opportunity, just not the right one for me. She doesn't explain further. She doesn't justify. She made the decision from clarity, not from pull. And that makes all the difference. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Most decisions are not made from clarity. They're made from pull, external pressure, social expectations, emotional momentum, or the need to avoid discomfort. Webs. Here's how to decide from clarity instead. Recognizing internal versus external pull. External pull comes from outside, what others think you should do, what seems impressive, what avoids conflict, what follows the expected path. Internal clarity comes from within, what aligns with your values, what feels right in your body, what serves your actual goals. Most people mistake external pull for internal clarity. They feel pressure and interpret it as conviction. But pressure is not clarity. It's just noise. The pause is a tool. Clarity requires space. When you're in the middle of pressure, urgency, or emotional charge, clarity is difficult to access. The pause creates that space. I need time to think. Let me sit with this. I'll decide tomorrow. These statements aren't delays. They're invitations for clarity to emerge. Removing hypothetical futures. Decisions made from pull often involve projecting into hypothetical futures. What will they think? What if I regret this? What if it's a mistake? These questions create anxiety, and anxiety drives reactive decisions. 15. Clarity-based decisions are grounded in the present. Right now, what feels true? Right now, what aligns with my values? Right now, what do I actually want? Listening to the body. Your body often knows before your mind does. Clarity feels open, grounded, and calm. Pull feels tight, rushed, or anxious. Web. When you're considering a decision, notice how your body responds. Does your chest tighten? Does your breath shallow? Or do you feel expansive and steady? The body doesn't lie. Learn to listen to it. Separating fear from intuition. Fear says, don't do this because it's scary. Intuition says, don't do this because it's not right. These feel similar, but they're different. Web. Phone. Fear is about avoiding discomfort. Intuition is about alignment. Clarity requires distinguishing between the two. Ask, am I avoiding this because I'm afraid or because it's genuinely not aligned? The would I advise this? Test. One way to access clarity is to step outside yourself. If your best friend were in this exact situation, what would you advise them? Often, when you remove your ego and emotions from the equation, the answer becomes obvious. Web. Fin. Decision ownership. Clarity-based decisions come with full ownership. You're not deciding to please others. You're not deciding to avoid judgment. You're deciding because this is what you choose, and you're willing to live with the outcome. Web Tauber Stun. Pull-based decisions come with resentment, because deep down you know you didn't choose freely. You were moved by forces outside yourself. Releasing the need for certainty. Clarity doesn't mean certainty. You won't always know if a decision is right, but clarity means the decision is aligned with who you are and what matters to you, regardless of outcome. Web Fibain. Pull-based decisions seek guarantees. Clarity-based decisions accept uncertainty but trust the alignment. Why this matters. Decisions made from clarity create peace. Even when they're difficult, you know you chose them. Decisions made from pull create regret, because you followed something outside yourself and lost yourself in the process. Web. Fin. The pattern looks like this. Pull-based, external pressure, reactive decision, resentment or regret later. Versus clarity-based, pause, internal check, aligned decision, peace with outcome. Making decisions from clarity doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees integrity, and integrity is more important than outcome. Web. Drummond. Finun. 3 real-life scenarios. Job offer, pull-based, takes it because it looks good to others, regrets it within months. Clarity-based, evaluates alignment, declines if it doesn't match long-term goals, stays at peace with decision. Relationship. Pull-based, stays because leaving feels hard or scary, resents partner over time. Clarity-based, honestly evaluates whether the relationship serves both people. Stays or leaves from clarity, not fear. Major purchase. Pull-based, buys because of social pressure or excitement, feels regret after. Clarity-based, pauses, checks if purchase aligns with values and finances, decides without external influence. Social commitment. Pull-based, says yes to avoid disappointing someone, dreads it leading up to the event. Clarity-based, checks in with self, says no if not aligned, feels calm either way. Career path. Pull-based follows the expected trajectory, ends up in a role that doesn't fit, feels stuck. Clarity-based, chooses based on values and interests, not prestige, builds a fulfilling path. Conflict response. Pull-based reacts immediately out of emotion, says things they regret. Clarity-based pauses, responds when clear, speaks from groundedness, not reactivity. 4 scripts, internal language, not manipulation. I decide from clarity, not pressure. I pause before I choose. I check, what feels true for me right now? I trust my body's signals. I separate fear from intuition. I own my decisions fully. External approval doesn't determine my choice. I'm allowed to take time. Clarity matters more than speed. I choose alignment over impression. 5. Practical psychological exercises. Exercise 1. The 72-hour clarity window. For major decisions, implement a 72-hour rule. No decision for 3 days. Let external pull settle. See what remains when urgency fades. Exercise 2. Body check-in. Before making a decision, close your eyes. Visualize each option. Notice how your body responds. Tightness or openness, anxiety or calm. Let the body guide. Exercise 3. External voice removal. Write down a decision you're facing. List all external voices. My parents think. Society expects. My friends would say. Cross them all out. Now ask, what do I think? Exercise 4. The advice to self-practice. Imagine your future self, 5 years from now. What would they advise you to do in this situation? Often distance creates clarity. Exercise 5. Daily clarity practice. Each evening, reflect on one decision you made that day. Ask, did I decide from clarity or from pull? Track patterns. Over time, clarity becomes more accessible. Chapter 11. Psychological Sovereignty. 1. Micro-story. There was a time when Lucas was easily moved. A strong opinion would sway him. A persuasive tone would make him second-guess. Social pressure would override his instincts. He wasn't weak. He was permeable. His boundaries were unclear. His sense of self was flexible. And that flexibility made him easy to influence. Then something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, it was gradual. He started noticing when he was being pulled, when guilt was being applied, when urgency was manufactured, when framing was shaping his perception before he'd even formed one. And instead of reacting automatically, he paused. He checked in with himself. He asked, is this what I actually think? Or is this what I'm being led to think? Over time, he developed something rare: psychological sovereignty. The ability to remain internally stable regardless of external pressure. He could sit in a room full of people who disagreed with him and stay calm. He could be presented with a reasonable option and still say no. He could feel guilt and not act on it. He could hear urgency and not rush. He wasn't stubborn. He wasn't closed-minded. He was just clear. And that clarity made him nearly impossible to move unconsciously. One day, a friend asked him, how do you stay so grounded when everyone around you is reacting? Lucas thought for a moment. I realized that most of what I thought was me, my opinions, my decisions, my responses, was actually just me reacting to influence I didn't see. Once I saw it, I could choose. And once I could choose, I was free. This is psychological sovereignty, and it's the foundation of a life lived on your own terms. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Psychological sovereignty is the state of being internally governed. You are not moved by forces you don't see. You are not shaped by pressures you don't choose. You operate from clarity, not compliance. Here's what it requires. Awareness as the foundation. You cannot resist influence you don't see. The first step to sovereignty is awareness, recognizing when you're being influenced, how and by whom. This means noticing tone, framing, timing, guilt, obligation, silence, authority, conformity, and emotional leverage. Once you see these forces, they lose much of their power, because influence relies on invisibility. Internal locus of control. Psychologically sovereign people operate from an internal locus of control. They believe their choices are theirs, not determined by external circumstances, other people's opinions, or social norms. Web. Final. This doesn't mean ignoring input. It means the final decision is always internal. You consider, you reflect, but you choose, and that choice is yours. Detachment from approval. Sovereignty requires releasing the need for universal approval. When you need to be liked, you're vulnerable to influence, because your behavior adjusts to maintain approval. Web. Woman. Sovereign people value respect over likability. They're okay with disapproval. They understand that not everyone will agree, and that's not a problem. Emotional regulation. Influence often works through emotional activation: fear, guilt, anxiety, urgency. Sovereignty requires the ability to feel these emotions without being controlled by them. Web. Fin. You notice the guilt, you acknowledge the fear, but you don't let them dictate action. Emotions are signals, not commands. Boundaries as non-negotiable. Sovereign people have clear boundaries and they enforce them. Not aggressively, not defensively, just consistently. Web. Fitting. These boundaries aren't punitive, they're protective. They preserve energy, clarity, and autonomy, and they're held regardless of external pressure. Comfort with uncertainty. Sovereignty means accepting that you won't always know if you're making the right decision, but you trust yourself to navigate outcomes. You don't need guarantees. You trust your ability to adapt. Web. 15. This removes the paralysis that comes from needing certainty before acting. You decide, you adjust, you move forward. Refusing to outsource judgment. Many people outsource their judgment. They defer to authority, they follow the crowd. They let others decide what's true, what's right, what's reasonable. Web. Titai. True. Sovereign people evaluate independently, they listen, they consider. But they form their own conclusions, and they trust those conclusions even when they differ from consensus. The discipline of consistency. Sovereignty is not a one-time achievement. It's a daily practice. Every time you notice influence and choose not to follow it, you strengthen sovereignty. Every time you hold a boundary, you reinforce it. Web. Fonona. Consistency builds the neural pathways. Over time, sovereignty becomes your default. Not because you're fighting, but because you've trained yourself to operate from clarity. Why it matters. Without sovereignty, you live a life shaped by forces outside yourself. You make decisions to avoid guilt. You comply to maintain approval. You follow norms you never agreed to. And over time, you lose touch with who you actually are. Sovereignty returns you to yourself. It allows you to live aligned with your values, make decisions from clarity, and build a life that's genuinely yours, not a reaction to external pressure. Web. The pattern looks like this: awareness, pause, internal evaluation, choice from clarity, consistency over time, sovereignty established. Psychological sovereignty is not about isolation. It's not about rejecting all influence. It's about conscious choice, about being the one who decides what moves you and what doesn't. Web. 3. Real-life scenarios. Social pressure. Non-sovereign response goes along with the group to avoid standing out, loses individual perspective. Sovereign response evaluates independently, speaks up if they disagree, comfortable with being the outlier. Authority influence. Non-sovereign response defers automatically to authority figures, assumes they're right because of their position. Sovereign response respects authority but evaluates claims independently. Questions when necessary. Emotional manipulation. Non-sovereign response feels guilt, adjusts behavior to relieve it, even when the guilt is imposed, not earned. Sovereign response notices the guilt, evaluates if it's valid, Holds boundary regardless of emotional pressure. Relationship dynamics. Non-sovereign response. Adjusts constantly to keep partner happy. Loses self in the process. Sovereign response. Stays grounded in own needs and values. Loves without losing autonomy. Decision-making. Non-sovereign response. Decides based on what others expect or what looks good externally. Sovereign response. Decides based on alignment with values and long-term goals. Owns the outcome. Conflict. Non-sovereign response collapses under pressure, apologizes excessively, agrees just to end tension. Sovereign response stays calm, states perspective clearly, doesn't need the other person to agree. 4 scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. I am internally governed. I notice influence, I don't follow it automatically. My choices are mine. I don't need approval to trust myself. I feel emotions without being controlled by them. I hold my boundaries regardless of pressure. I trust my judgment. I'm comfortable with uncertainty. I evaluate independently. I stay grounded in clarity, not compliance. 5 practical emotional exercises. Exercise 1. Daily sovereignty. Check in. Each evening ask, did I make decisions today from clarity or from influence? Name one moment where you held sovereignty and one where you didn't. Track progress over time. Exercise 2. Influence awareness journal. For 1 week, write down every instance you notice someone trying to influence you. Name the tactic. This builds recognition, which is the foundation of resistance. Exercise 3. Independent evaluation practice. When someone, authority, friend, media makes a claim, pause before accepting it. Ask, what's the evidence? Do I actually agree? Form your own conclusion consciously. Exercise 4. Boundary reinforcement. Choose one boundary you've struggled to maintain. Hold it consistently for 30 days, regardless of pushback. This trains sovereignty through repetition. Exercise 5. Approval detachment. Exercise. Do one thing this week that might be disapproved of. Something small, aligned with your values, but outside social norms. Sit with the discomfort of not being universally liked. Build tolerance for disapproval. Chapter 12. Quiet power as a way of life. 1. Micro-story. 10 years ago, Adrian was reactive. Someone raised their voice and he matched it. Someone applied pressure and he either caved or exploded. He was constantly in motion, defending, explaining, adjusting, or resisting aggressively. It was exhausting. Today, Adrian is different. Not because he's older, not because he's less passionate, but because he's learned something rare. Quiet power. He sits in meetings and listens more than he speaks. When he does speak, people lean in. His words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're deliberate. He doesn't argue. He doesn't over-explain. He states his perspective once clearly, and then he stops. If someone disagrees, he doesn't fight to convince them. He just stays grounded in what he knows to be true. He doesn't react to pressure. He pauses, he evaluates, he decides consciously. And when he says no, people accept it, because his no doesn't waver. He doesn't need approval. He doesn't fear disapproval. He's not trying to be liked. He's trying to be clear. And clarity, it turns out, is magnetic. People describe him as calm, steady, unshakable. But Adrian knows it's not a personality trait. It's a practice. Every day he chooses groundedness over reactivity, clarity over compliance, presence over performance, and that choice, repeated over years, has become who he is. This is what quiet power looks like. Not dramatic, not aggressive, just solid. And that solidity changes everything. 2. Deep psychological mechanism analysis. Quiet power is not passivity, it's not weakness. It's the integration of everything you've learned: awareness, boundaries, emotional regulation, clarity, and sovereignty, practiced until they become natural. Here's what it looks like in practice. Presence over performance. Quiet power doesn't perform. It doesn't try to impress, dominate, or prove. It just is. You show up as yourself, grounded, clear, and calm, and that presence speaks louder than any forced display of strength. Performance exhausts, presence sustains, and over time, people feel the difference. Economy of words. Quiet power uses fewer words, not because it's withholding, but because it trusts that clarity doesn't require volume. You say what needs to be said, once, calmly, clearly, and then you stop. Excessive explanation dilutes power. Silence after clarity amplifies it. Non-reactivity is default. Reactive people are predictable. Push them and they push back. Quiet power is non-reactive. You observe, you pause, you respond when ready, or not at all. This unpredictability makes you difficult to manipulate. Reactivity hands control to others. Non-reactivity keeps it with you. Detachment from outcomes. Quiet power doesn't cling to specific outcomes. You act with intention. You speak your truth. But you release attachment to how others respond. You can't control their reaction, only your action. This detachment creates freedom. You're no longer hostage to others' approval, agreement, or compliance. Comfortable with disapproval. Quiet power doesn't seek universal approval. You understand that clarity will sometimes disappoint people, and you're okay with that. You prioritize integrity over likability. This comfort with disapproval is liberating. It removes the fear that drives most compliance. Boundaries without explanation. Quiet power sets boundaries calmly and holds them consistently. No justification, no apology, no negotiation, just clarity. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available. My answer is no. These statements are complete, and they're respected, because they're delivered without waver. Self-trust is foundation. Quiet power is built on self-trust. You trust your perception. You trust your decisions. You trust your ability to navigate uncertainty. This trust removes the need for external validation. You don't need someone else to confirm you're right. Integration of practice. Quiet power is not a single skill. It's the integration of daily practices, pausing before reacting, noticing influence, holding boundaries, making decisions from clarity, staying grounded under pressure. These practices, repeated over months and years, become automatic. You don't think about them, you just do them, and that effortless execution is what makes the power quiet. Why it's powerful. Quiet power is powerful because it can't be shaken. Loud power can be challenged, countered, or overwhelmed. Quiet power just holds. It doesn't fight. It doesn't bend. It stays. And that steadiness, in a world of constant noise, reactivity, and chaos, is rare. People feel it. They respect it. And often they follow it. The pattern looks like this: awareness, practice, consistency, integration, quiet power as default way of being. Quiet power is not something you achieve once. It's something you choose daily. And over time, those daily choices become who you are. 3. Real-life scenarios. Workplace conflict. Reactive power raises voice, argues, tries to dominate, creates more tension. Quiet power stays calm, states perspective once, doesn't engage in debate, lets clarity stand. Social pressure. Reactive power defends loudly, justifies, seeks approval. Quiet power, this is my choice, stays grounded, doesn't need agreement. Negotiation. Reactive power pushes aggressively, creates resistance. Quiet power states terms clearly, stays silent, lets the other person decide. Comfortable walking away. Relationship dynamics. Reactive power needs to be right, argues until partner agrees. Quiet power. I see it differently. Doesn't need partner to agree, respects difference. Authority challenge. Reactive power challenges defensively, creates conflict. Quiet power asks clarifying questions, evaluates independently, holds perspective calmly. Emotional manipulation. Reactive power gets defensive, over-explains, tries to prove they're not at fault. Quiet power. I understand you're upset. Doesn't absorb guilt. Holds boundary without justification. 4. Scripts. Internal language, not manipulation. I am grounded regardless of what's happening around me. I trust my clarity. I speak once, that's enough. I'm comfortable with silence. I don't need approval to know I'm right. I hold my boundaries calmly. Reactivity is not power. Groundedness is. I pause. I evaluate. I choose. I'm okay with disapproval. Quiet power is my way of life. 5 practical emotional exercises. Exercise 1. Daily grounding ritual. Start each day with 5 minutes of stillness. Breathe, ground, anchor in your center. This sets the tone for the entire day. Groundedness is a practice, not a feeling. Exercise 2. Economy of words. Practice. For 1 week, reduce unnecessary explanation. Say what needs to be said, then stop. Notice how much more weight your words carry. Exercise 3. Non-reactive response delay. When something triggers you, wait 10 seconds before responding. This small delay interrupts reactivity and creates space for clarity. Exercise 4. Approval detachment check-in. Each evening, reflect, did I seek approval today or did I trust my own judgment? Track patterns. Shift toward self-trust. Exercise 5. Integration practice. Review the practices from all previous chapters. Choose 3 to focus on this month. Practice daily until they become automatic. This is how quiet power is built, through consistent integration. Conclusion. Most people move through life without realizing they're being moved. They say yes when they mean no. They comply without choosing. They adjust without noticing. They make decisions shaped by forces they never see. Guilt, obligation, framing, silence, authority, conformity, and pressure disguised as normalcy. And they believe those decisions are theirs. But they're not. Not really. Because influence that's invisible isn't influence, it's control. You came to this audiobook because some part of you sensed this. You felt the pull, the weight of expectations you never agreed to, the discomfort of compliance that didn't align with clarity, the exhaustion of being shaped by others' needs, opinions, and agendas. And now you see it. You've learned how silent influence works, how tone, timing, and framing shape perception before you're aware you're perceiving, how guilt activates without accusation, how authority commands without force, how silence creates pressure, how obligation is imposed, not chosen, how social conditioning makes you follow rules you never consciously accepted. But more importantly, you've learned how to resist, not aggressively but calmly. Not through force but through awareness, not by fighting influence but by refusing to internalize it. You've learned to pause before reacting, to recognize pressure without absorbing it, to notice framing and expand beyond it, to hold boundaries without justification, to make decisions from clarity, not pull, to stay centered when others are reactive, to develop psychological sovereignty, the ability to remain internally governed regardless of external forces. And you've learned that quiet power is not about dominance. It's about groundedness. It's about being unmoved by forces designed to move you. It's about making choices that are genuinely yours, not reactions to invisible influence. This is not theory. This is practice, and practice is what changes everything. Most people will finish this audiobook and return to old patterns. They'll recognize influence in the moment and still follow it. They'll see the pressure and still comply. Because awareness without action is just observation, and observation changes nothing. Don't be most people. Start now. Choose one practice. Pause before responding. Notice when guilt is being applied. Hold one boundary without explanation. Make one decision from clarity instead of compliance. Resist one instance of social pressure. One small act of sovereignty creates a crack in the pattern, and through that crack, freedom emerges. You are not weak for having been influenced. Influence is designed to be invisible. It's psychological architecture built over centuries. You were operating in a system you didn't see, but now you see it, and what you see you can resist. This is not about becoming cold, closed, or detached. It's about becoming clear, grounded, internally sovereign. It's about loving, connecting, and engaging, without losing yourself in the process. It's about living a life that's yours, not shaped by others' expectations, not dictated by invisible pressures, not moved by forces you didn't choose. You now have the tools, you have the awareness, you have the framework. The only question is, will you use them? 5 years from now, you'll look back at this moment, and you'll either see it as the point where you reclaimed your internal authority, or as another piece of information you absorbed but didn't act on. The choice, as always, is yours. Stay grounded, stay clear, stay sovereign. And remember, the most powerful influence is the one you refuse to follow. If this audiobook has brought you clarity, strength, or peace, consider supporting the channel so more people can find this message. Please like this audio and subscribe. Your support helps this work reach those who feel overwhelmed, anxious, or unprotected, and gives them a path back to calm, confidence, and emotional freedom. Thank you for listening. Stay grounded. Stay wise. You are the anchor in every storm.